where kingdom greetings and God's richest blessings be multiplied to you and to yours. Beloved family, you're tuned into another segment of Feeling Our Lands live into active worldwide broadcast. I'm your host, Pastor Hobbs. Be with you through to 6 p.m. and we are so excited today to have with me live in the studio my guest and intern in the person of Nasir Hibbert. He was with us on yesterday, and today we're pleased to have him back for the 2 hours, God willing. We did 2 hours on yesterday, and only 1 hour got recorded. Unfortunately, it wasn't a great interview. The second portion, unfortunately, only the folks who were tuned in real time got to enjoy it. So we're going to pick it up again on today. So again, how are you, Nasir?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. What about yourself?
I am outstanding, man. I could not be better. I'm just excited about the grace and the favor of God on the ministry and the opportunity to meet you and what we're doing together to build capacity of our organization in this particular season. So, I'm ecstatic. I'm just absolutely ecstatic. We've made a lot of progress, and this today actually is week 2.
It is complete of week 2, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is actually.
Yeah.
We got a lot done just in 2 weeks, let alone. So
yeah, tell folks some of what we've been doing in these 2 weeks.
Initially we started off with, when I entered, I was first tasked with talking to city council candidates and asking them, are they okay with coming on the show, and what exactly their platform was with prison reform and how to help people who are behind the wall and are returning citizens. And with that, we got 4 or 5 on. We had Barry Lawton on, Joel Richards, and this upcoming Sunday, we actually have Ann Walsh coming on to speak about their platform on returning citizens and prison reform. In addition to that, we've just been helping get the studio area organized, as well as building shelves. We just got a new desktop set up today, so that should help things out a lot. And just things like that. Our next goal is to hopefully contact the at-large city council members to have them come on the air and talk about their idea or platform on prison reform and how they can help people who are behind the wall, as well as their vote still does count too. So
absolutely, and again, he's being really modest. Again, he's hit the ground running. Nasir has come in every day on time, early on time, stayed late. He has been professional, who has just been extraordinary and a reflection of one, himself and his family, two, Madison Park Development Corporation, as the entity that actually facilitated the connection of interns with Healing Our Land and a host of other organizations. And so we had the opportunity. We work with Jenny, who does an outstanding job. We've had interns over the past, and we're grateful for each one. This is the first time I had the opportunity to go to the orientation of the young folks going through the orientation and preparing. They had a attire for hire fashion show.
Yes, it was.
Talk about that.
It was a really great moment to just highlight our skills as a person, actually highlight even to the people who were there as site supervisors, as I like to call it, just to show them what we could offer to these sites themselves, and just highlight ourselves and be like, yeah, this is who I am, this is what I like to do. And also, fashion is a big way to talk. When you enter the room, the first thing people look at is what you have on. So
yeah.
That's a great way for them to just show both sides of kind of personality and their professionalism. So
yeah, and you guys, you did a great job, and others did a great job. Some were a little shy in terms of being able, and for whatever reason, but nonetheless, I think it was a great opportunity and exposure and push for folks to come even out of their comfort zones. And we talked about being connected to different sites and the reasons why people chose different sites, and I met Nasir as one of the young men who came over when I was talking to another gentleman about some of the particular facets of our particular internship, as there are, again, I don't know, maybe 12 different, maybe
12, there's 21, I think.
21
different sites.
Wow. So 21 different sites that are affording opportunities to work with these young folks. And so we met. That's when I met Nasir, and he had the opportunity to come over, and he engages. And I'll let him tell again, for those who weren't here yesterday, to hear why you particularly chose this internship opportunity with Healing Our Land.
Well, initially I found that as something to just step out of my comfort zone, as I'm not used to really working in an environment like this, and a professional environment at that. So although I do have the attributes to be professional, it's just something I've never done before. As well as I initially heard they have a broadcast too, and I was like, oh yes, that's for me. I like speaking. I could talk when I need to talk, and I could be silent when I need to be silent. So that worked for me. As well as their whole idea behind prison reform and helping people behind the wall. I really liked that you guys gave them a chance or a voice to actually speak to the public and their elected possible officials. So it just all aligned perfectly, and I was like, I can't let this opportunity pass up, so I took it.
Amazing. Now, I'm curious as it relates to the broadcasting. Expound upon the broadcasting a little bit, because I know for those, we've talked offline, and I know that you have podcasts and have even association of your peers in some way, as you tuned in on yesterday. So talk about your podcast and some of your network and some of you guys, your aspirations, even as it relates to photography and cinematography.
So me personally, I am a aspiring photographer, and that is something I do want to do as I get older. I enjoy it, not just as a little side hustle, but definitely something that makes me happy while I'm doing it, and how to express myself emotionally. As well as that, cinematography is definitely, I like to create films and little like videos, because depending on the person, it makes people feel all different types of things, and it just helps me understand people more often of how they feel. I have a couple of friends that I've worked with who are trying to build their own podcast or their own little talk station, where they can just express how they feel, and almost how they feel they have good points that need to be said, but they don't have the platform to say them on. So they're taking their own initiative to try to build their own platform. That way they can get out their own voice and be heard, because that's at the end of the day, that's what most people want to feel.
Outstanding. And so one of the things, and here with so there's the Academy Broadcasting that's happening like right next door in the same building here of the Global Ministries Christian Church. My sister Anita Hamilton, who's a member of Global Ministries Christian Church, and she's the teacher or administrator for the Academy of Broadcasting in there. That's another internship opportunity with Madison Park Development Corporation. And again, we're really right next door. So we're in the Boston-based radio and TV network studio as we speak. Outside of this area is the Healing Our Land office, and then another area, all in the lower level of the Global Ministries Christian Church, is the Academy of Broadcasting. This is maybe the third or fourth term or summer that we have had an Academy of Broadcasting, training young people how to do all the facets and aspects of broadcasting. They did today. We had the opportunity, myself and Nasir, as well as our station manager, giving some feedback of some. I don't know how to explain it. How would you explain what we did today with the Academy of Broadcasting?
We gave some feedback on some little projects they made, which one of them was a promo to their show. It wasn't a real show. They were just making like a little how do you say, draft in a way of just a little promo of how they can promote the Academy of Broadcasting. In addition to that, they also did a little talking one where it was a commercial, I believe it was, where they had to create a commercial on, you don't know what to get from McDonald's, here it is. So they're advertising what to order from McDonald's and what the best order is, the price of it, and basically we had to judge their creativity, their audience, the content, and then transitions. And I enjoyed seeing the difference of how people viewed things and how they took initiative and their creativity in mind. What else do I have to say on that? I think it was a good way for them to start too, also because they're only 3 days in. She said this. They only did this for 3 days.
Yes.
Yeah. So but I seen personally, I know I was pretty impressed for the 3 days working on that. It's very nice for them to have that. But I'm sure there's more to come. Yeah.
And they have pretty much started around the same time that we started. So the Academy of Broadcasting, this is I think the end of their second week as it relates to the whole Academy of Broadcasting. And so this particular piece about editing was something that, was brand new to them. And so this was like, I think maybe their first couple of projects with this new thing. So again, I thought it was great that they took the initiative and learning something new with their own diverse innovation in terms of how to convey what they wanted to convey. So I thought it was great, and I was pleased that we were able to have the opportunity to be able to give feedback. But they also have a weekly broadcast
every Tuesday.
Yeah, and
Every
talk
Tuesday
about
at 11 from 11 to 11:30.
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe they go on, and they also do civic engagement. So they go on, and each one of them are tasked with talking about something that's going on in the environment. So last time I heard a little glimpse, I think Ross's name was speaking about Black history and how it's not highlighted enough, and most of it is most of our history in the United States of America. So they each just highlight a little piece of history or a little piece of something going on in the environment or society that's not talked about enough, and it gives the youth a voice.
Yeah, and so it's been great to see them even evolving. So they've had 2 broadcasts so far. And what's your feedback in terms of both, since you've seen both of them, how that is evolving?
Not to put them down, but the first day I got here was their first broadcast actually.
Yeah.
But their energy wasn't the highest, but it was their first day, so I'm not expecting too much, and I'm giving them the respect and credits of even coming on here.
That's right.
And actually showing their faces and at least engaging.
Yeah.
But as I noticed the second week went along, they were very more engaged physically with eye contact, and actually looked like they wanted to be there and presentable within their voices, their tone, and their facial structure. So I'm glad they approved.
Getting more comfortable.
Yeah.
And as you said, I mean, when you're doing something different, we're all coming out of our comfort zones and launching out into something. It's unfamiliar, it's awkward, but keep at it. We're seeing progress. I remember when I first started here, again, it was very daunting, very, very daunting. Pastor Bruce Wall is a really interesting teacher where there's literally been times that, he's having you engineer while you're simultaneously hosting a guest. And it can be the caliber of a person. I'll never forget State Representative Gloria Fox. She was here. We're in the studio, which was in there, and everything shut down. And he's having to instruct me how to break it down, shift her into that green room, and build another studio simultaneously live while we're on the air, real time. Take this out, take that out. But he wouldn't just give me the instruction. He was like, what makes sense to you? Why do you think like there's input, there's an output? And I'm like, just tell me what I need to do right now.
I wanted to make sure you knew.
Yeah, but that's how he teaches. He teaches, no, I want you to understand the why, not just the what.
Yeah.
So that you can figure it out the next time that it makes sense to you. Input, output, it's just making you're understanding systems, not just task.
Yes, he's an amazing character. I can see it just when you look at him. He looks like a teacher in general. So.
He is definitely a guru, very humble, but really knowledgeable. So we're really blessed to have this platform. I mean, he's the founder of this incredible place. I mean, for people who are tuned into this broadcast, they see it from a perspective of what the camera is showing, but they don't get to see what you see and are experiencing in the context of this whole studio. And not just the studio, but the green room and the whole. So help people to understand who aren't here what you see and experience and feel in this space, in this studio, that they may not be able to see just from the outside looking in.
I want to say initially it's a little bit overwhelming, as there's a lot just going on here with you guys don't see the desk, but there's a lot going on even in front of Pastor Hobbs. There's a lot going on, but I think you guys both do a good job of making the guests feel welcomed and not like overwhelmed, and like being like, okay, like I'm calm, just feed off of my energy and we can get through this thoroughly.
Yes.
So but they built an amazing studio. It's not too like intimidating, like, oh my gosh, there's so much electronics around me. It's the perfect amount to be like, okay, yeah, it's an environment, but still I can enjoy the conversation with you, and it's not like I gotta be tedious of what I say. So I enjoy the environment you guys built here, and I'm excited to even just be on here right now. So
we're excited. We're excited to have you. Really, we are. I mean, young people. A pastor's whole heartbeat is young people. He was a youth pastor, and it's interesting. As you get older, you still have a heart for youth. And in our minds, we always want to be young. We know we're not, and so, but he still always has a heart for youth. And so his whole thing is he really, and really with as a vision, his whole thing right now is to pour everything that he has in terms of the wisdom, the character, the integrity, all the things that he's learned over these years to pour them into another generation that's appreciative and wants to be receptive. And he also is open to learn from our young people.
Yes, he is. I said that about both you guys. You guys are, the wisdom is you can give, but at the same time you can accept, because it's two different generations. We both know two different things. So I'm glad we're able to connect in the middle ground there.
We are too. That's what it's all about, man. That's what it's about. It's a youth and young adult led movement that is adult and institution supported. In that vein, we have also been talking about civics, and when I say civics and current events, that's the better word that I want to use. So yes, civics, but how does it connect with current events? And so we read the papers every Thursday, and yesterday we started to process some of the papers, and we'll get more into that. I don't know that I actually brought them. We might have to do that on the second part, because didn't bring them. We've been nonstop since Nasir came in. We have been literally nonstop today, as we are every day. Yes. I mean, the time just literally flies by because we're being extremely productive, and it's just a good energy and synergy. With that said, we've been talking about current, and yesterday the very specific current event that resonated in Nasir's mind that I want to kind of talk about a little bit. I'll let you talk about it.
The newspaper, correct?
Yeah.
So I happened to be scanning through the newspaper as I had it in front of me, and I noticed something that said the Black Negro picnic, or was it Negro Election Day? That's what it was.
Yes.
And it threw me off a little bit, because I didn't remember that it's a black written paper. But a lot of times when you hear things such as like Negro, you immediately think like, oh, it's a white person shunning us again.
Yes.
Oh, it's your head goes down, and it's like what could we have done now? I'm such a great person, and you're putting me, you're marginalizing me again, and generalizing me.
Yes.
And it hurt for a second. And then as I read on about it, it wasn't to be honest, it was said that most black people don't know what it's about. They know it's a thing, but never realize what it's about. And just to explain the history now, as some of you are new and maybe didn't hear yesterday, it's to honor the first election when the blacks came up together and decided they want to create a liaison to then go and almost hold the people who are bringing them down accountable, and bring all their voices together and have someone who can output it. So they came together, they picked who they felt was the best option for that, and then decided they're going to make them their liaison. So it's been, I think, 283 years it's been a thing, and it was originally named the Black Negro Picnic, but I'm guessing they must have changed the name or found that it was better branded, saying the Negro Election Day, as that's what it really is in history.
Well said. And he captured all of that. So that was something that you had not heard of before until yesterday. You read it in that paper.
At all. I haven't heard a single thing about it, which was a little bit saddening for me, because I am African American myself, so it was a little like I don't know whether to be ashamed of myself or whether to be ashamed of that it's not publicized enough. But it was kind of a little common ground, like, okay, maybe I should do more research on my own culture, my own history, and at the same time, what can I now do to publicize that, as I'm trying to network that out and tell friends, hey, just so you know, we have a Negro Election Day.
Yeah.
There's a day for us to honor black people in our first election, not electing a president, but at least a liaison to help spread our voices more. So it's one step at a time. We can better our own community. So,
in that same vein, as we were in the process of, or as we are in the process of organizing our space, as he's already talked about, he's been. We took some pictures of before and during, and we'll show you the product at the end. And again, we hope there won't be an end, but the transition post the end of the internship program. So we've seen I've seen tremendous growth and trend and impact already from Nasir's presence in our office. As he said, we now have we ordered a host of it. We have a small grant we got from the Office of Returning Citizens, and we were able to have a small line item for some equipment to build our capacity. And he's been great in terms of being able to get the things, receive the things, put them together, track them, to be able to load up all the software, training me on how to be able to utilize the software that we can now scan. We can actually make copies. We can send faxes. We can, do emails, and we can do some of those things remotely from our phone, from the laptop. And so these are services that will now be able to offer returning citizens, but not just returning citizens, but I would submit underserved, marginalized, disenfranchised. Yesterday, we were on our way. Well, this was even after the post office. We'd gone to the post office to mail a book to someone who gave a donation to Healing Our Land. But later that afternoon, in between waiting for the last package, which was the laptop that Nasir is utilizing to help us as we, again, build capacity.
Yes.
So he was gracious enough to actually leave. He was here late and then left to go into the library to get some books, and then came back, and God sovereignly orchestrated that we came at the same time to be able to meet the same person who delivered some packages earlier.
Message from the Lord. I just felt it. I was like, I've got my books. Maybe I should go wait real quick. And it literally just happened that when I took my backpack off, I looked up and the guy is walking over. I'm like, oh my gosh, perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
That timing could not have been better. That was all God, right? You have to admit that was no coincidence
At all.
I mean, just all three of us at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that was great. We had that happen, and again, he was able to get the laptop set up, and so came in today, and we set up the actual desktops as well as the Wi-Fi, and he's helping us create some forms so that we can be able to find out. Talk about what the forms are going to do.
So the forms are honestly to gather information about the returners and returning. So that way we can have a better, documentation of who they are and build better relationships with them. So and it has things like, oh, what is your email, phone number, and what is our best way to contact you for the returners already. The returning, we can't necessarily contact them because they're behind the wall, but people who have already returned, it's for us to just really understand and build a relationship with them. We want what's best for you, and how can you take advantage of the services that we're offering you. In addition to that, we also ask them any questions for possible electoral candidates. So if you have questions for your city council and maybe wonder, what district am I in, who do I vote for, what information do I want, we're trying to put together a voter's guide for them to really understand how I can better vote, how to vote if they don't already know, and where to put their vote in, because some of them may not know as they were behind the wall. So we're just help gathering information, and that way we can help them and they can take a better advantage of the services we are giving them.
Yeah, and so that all this is happening simultaneously while we're re-engaging volunteers who've been with us in the past and who can join us now as we gear up to go.
So yes, you guys can join us now, and we are in the process of creating a website, and trust me, the second that's up, you guys will hear about it. But if you actually want to be a volunteer and join, you can reach me at 774-297-7740 or at Nasir, NASIR.healingourlandinc@gmail.com.
Perfect. And so, and so we're, again, excited about the folks who helped us over the years, and we're excited about the people who will join us who have not, as we continue to go consistently back in and build this movement that will be sustained over time as we connect with academic institutions like Boston University, like Harvard Universities, the graduate students that are actually, two of them have become now professors. Are even one professor from Harvard is helping to create a curriculum for her students that's going to actually compile or create this actual voter's guide that we then will be able to have ongoing as a
as a voter guide. So keep in mind, I was going to say, keep in mind to the youth as well, because not only can you not vote behind, we're helping allow people behind the wall and people who have returned to vote, but also the youth as well. as their votes both do count, as it's a large population of people.
Absolutely. And in that vein, was it City Council Julia Mejia who was at the orientation?
Yes, she was at our attire hire, which was also considered orientation for us. But she then told us as well, as I didn't even know this, and many of the people in the room didn't know this, so we can now vote at the age of 16 and 17 in Boston. So I'm glad they finally passed that, because the youth is a very big population in Boston, and our voice does matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, that was very encouraging. Now I have to find out. In fact, I have to have her come on as a guest. She used to have a standing broadcast here once a month, and she would just check in and kind of talk about policy and programs and things that we can do to engage. But I really would love for her to talk about more details about that specific piece of legislation, just so that people can directly engage her as as they're advocating for, again, young people to be civically engaged. So that's one piece that's going on. So while all of that's happening and we are building capacity to go in, we're looking to go back in around August. That's around the time frame to prepare for the primary election. So, and Nasir is again continuing to reach out to the candidates to bring them here on the air, as well as we're working to able to bring them behind the wall with us, to be able to have the returning citizens directly engage them. So the other thing was in the process of organizing, the office. So there is a vote, the history of voting, and it talks about the inception. Again, we can go back to when
1767 it went back to, and it went to 2016, which I don't think people put into perspective is how far apart and how close apart those times are. And as I was reading, and I happened to say to Pastor, I said, so this was the first civil rights movement we had for black people, not just voting, but civil rights in general. And I think it was 1960 was exactly it. And then I went to 2012, I believe it was, and I was like, this is when we got our first black president elected. And it wasn't surprising for me, but in a way I was like, people don't realize how close together those are, and how we are still fighting for our civil rights, regardless of if they give us our vote. And we're still fighting for our civil right at the end of the day. So it was just a little bit baffling to me, and I wanted to come on here and say, I want people to realize that there are still people in this day and age and who have experienced not only this first civil rights movement as black people for voting and not for voting, but the fact that we got our first black president elected, and how close those times are together, and that we're still fighting for our civil rights.
It's real talk, and fighting for our democracy, right? Because the truth of the matter is that there is many people who we have fought to be able to get a lot of rights. Even the fact that, even as he said, the civil rights, right? Black people, we understand the Constitution at one point said that black people were not even fully human. So when the forefathers of our country, who were all slave owners, all white men, founded this country, we know that it said all men are given these unalienable rights to the pursuit of happiness and justice, but all men did not include black men, because we were considered 3/5 human. And so though they amended that, and we had to fight, literally people bled, people were killed, people were imprisoned and beaten, and had, if you've seen the civil rights movement, you saw where people, literally officers were releasing attack dogs, water hoses. Did you ever see any of those movies?
I definitely have movies. Even now with the Black Lives Matter movement that we just went through during the pandemic and coming off of the pandemic, we've seen a lot of it in Boston too, as well as police just brutality completely, and disregarding the fact that we're still human at the end of the day, and that we have a right to protest for our own civil rights.
So it's one thing to see it in the movies of the 60s, and you did see those, like the Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement, but you're saying even more recently we've seen police brutality against black people with the whole Black Lives Matters and some of those George Floyd, and on the heels of those kind of things. So as much progress as we have made such little progress, and so it's a constant fight. And so it was interesting. So Ulysses Jacks, an attorney here at Global Ministries Christian Church, he was the one who actually created this whole wall that gives this history, and he created this, and it talks about the history of voting rights and where we are today, and that continues to evolve. That's something. One of the tasks I've asked Nasir to do is to help to preserve that, so that's something one that we have to continue to educate ourselves. Even though I've read it, I haven't fully retained. Like, you captured and recalled quite a bit of that, but I haven't processed it where it's like just constant in my mind, every detail of that progression. And I want to, because it's important to know that for myself. It's important to share that. It's important to capture it and communicate it to other people, so that we understand, one, where the fight that we've taken that to get to where we are, and the fight that we have to take to maintain the progress and move forward in progress.
Yes, it is. Thankfully, the Lord has blessed me with the gift to retain that information. But I think it's a good thing for everyone to read. So even if possibly one time we could have it up here and highlight specific parts, we can do that as well. But it is really touching to realize how close those events are in time.
Yeah. So that's a great idea, and I think we let's definitely do that. Let's follow up on that. And he gave us an idea how we can capture it and to put it up there. And so we're going to do that. And I guess one of the things you talked about is I thought about laminating, and he had a better idea that was matting it, putting it in a frame, so that it can be really preserved. And so that's a project that we're working on. And if there's folks who have any capacity or ideas to be able, or donations you want to give to help us to get the frame or whatever, we'll be happy to receive that. So, but just the information, the education, and Black history. I appreciate here at Global Ministry of Christian Church, every Sunday we have a sister, Lynette Scott, who does a Black History Moment, where we educate our congregation and our listening and viewing audience something about Black history every single Sunday. And so, and as you heard, even Ross, as well as Noel, who go to our church, so does JJ actually, but they were talking, they were talking about their appreciation of Black history. So I find it interesting that young people are really appreciating their own history, right, as Black people. And this is something that you're not going to oftentimes hear, other than Black History Month. You might hear but it's not to the level of, there's so much that's a rich history that we have contributed to this society as people of color. And so we need to, and there's an intentional effort to be able to suppress that information so that people feel, so they perpetuate racism. That's really the point, is to not make you aware of your heritage. And I mean, the pyramids and the Egyptians and the king, we were kings and we were queens, right? Before we were ever slaves. Like, that's not our origin, is slaves. That's what they made. They tried to enslave us. But our origin is actually kings and queens. They cannot replicate how you create pyramids that are still intact over all of these years. They don't know how we did it, and they can't replicate it. So that's the kind of ingenuity and wisdom that we have. And it's not to say that Black people are better than white people. We're all created in God's image, but it's to say, don't suppress one's truth or history to make one society seem superior.
Yes, completely. And I want to touch on the fact that I'm glad the youth is talking about Black history, as even as now I'm going through school, I'm navigating school, and I'm realizing, like, we're told a lot of things that are white innovated, and then we realize later on, as history goes on, we hear a little video that's like, actually, to find out, a Black man created the first engine. It wasn't even a white man, but because he was Black and the time it was, the white man decided he's going to label it his. And as we dig through history, we're slowly starting to realize that there's a lot of concepts and a lot of innovations and a lot of technology that's made like that, and it's surprising. And I'm glad that the youth is actually taking it on and putting it more than as it should be, and not just holding it behind closed doors, because that needs to be talked about.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, in many senses, we talk about, if you're thinking about systems that are run by Europeans, then even the mother of invention is they say, what does it say? The mother of invention is need, or right, necessity. You need to create something because you need it. Yeah. So you create something because there's a need, right? And so so this is what happened. And but the patent that you need to be able to own that came from white folks. So you could create it, but they're going to steal. Many things were stolen to be able to reap the benefit off of your creativity and ingenuity that came out of responding to a need that you actually were oppressed. But the truth of the matter is, again, we got to dig. That's why you can't just go by surface value, and the commercial or mainstream, because that typically tends to be white.
Let me ask you, do you know what sharecropping is? What it was a thing when slaves got freed. Do you know what it is?
I don't.
So sharecropping was it was invented by slave owners, and it basically was, they're gonna rent out their farm to you. But with the sharecropping, which is where the name comes in, you have to share your crops, and the crops would be how they make their money. So what they would do, the slave owners or former slave owners would allow you to rent out their farm, so you could make all your crops you want, and they then take part of the equity you have from that. So let's say they'd say, okay, we want 70% and you take 30%, but they'll make it so that the percent they take takes more than the money that you have to now owe them. So when it's time for you to go pay their rent, you can't pay the rent because they just took half your crop, so you no longer have the money to pay for that. So it was a way for them to re-enslave them, because they don't have the money, what are they going to say? Now I'll have to enslave you now because you don't have my money. And it just kept happening and happening and happening. So that's what I mean. As history goes on, I'm learning more and more, and just as the youth were learning more and more that this is how we were kept down. And I still see that nowadays. That's still happening. Is with black companies that are being made, and the government is just taking more than they can put in, causing them to just fall back at their feet again.
It's a concept of like predatory lending, right? They're preying on you, and like say they give you even like check cashers and different kind of things, or even credit cards that they may give you some money, but the truth of the matter, or like your direct deposit or your social security, but the interest that they're charging you on that is so outrageous that it keeps you constantly in debt. So same concept.
Yeah, it's a sad society we live in, but I hope even having a voice on here, and as days go on, as the youth steps in, I notice we're breaking barriers.
Yes.
And we're creating new forms, as in black companies. I'm noticing a lot more black companies, and that's why I'm partially glad and very glad to move out to the city, as I now. I'm not gonna say more around my people, but more around black companies and black people, and I can actually understand my roots and origin and learn more. Or even being here with Pastor Hobbs, I learned so much about my roots that it's just like I'm now really, even with the statement you said, we came from kings and queens. Like I'm so used to being. Is it patronized? But
yes,
I'm patronized to this lifestyle and to a African American that I now forget that the African part. I'm black.
Yeah,
we came from kings and queens, not presidents and democracy. So I mean,
yes, we were in as funny as you said, as African Americans, we've been relegated to a second class citizen.
Yes, we have.
Right. However, that's why when we came here from other countries and we see movies like Roots. You ever see the series of Roots?
It sounds familiar.
Okay. Yeah, Roots was a time that it was a movie that Alex Haley did a whole story about the roots, and basically was talking about slavery, and his family and their experience of slavery. And it's just a horrible kind of just chattel slavery was just deplorable how they treated people. But with that said, as horrible as it was, again, they said it was showing you, beating you out, your name out of you, your language out of you, right? Like just constantly beating you down until you were so docile that you would assimilate into this Eurocentric culture. And now from my perspective, we have the house slaves and the field slaves. That's basically the construct. So you're a slave, but you can be high class slave where you have more benefits, or you can be, but to really be empowered as an African American, that actually means you are your ancestors, that you were disconnected from that heritage and that culture, that you actually get that reconnected to that. And for the years of kind of reacclimation that you have to do to decolonize yourself or your mind from being subjected to being a lower class citizen in this society, that stick your chest up and your head, with pride, but not your pride. One, yes, because we were born here and we have every right to be here, and to have full access to every benefit and every resource that our European brothers and sisters have, that brought us here against our own will and treated us in that way. So we have every right. So when they talk about go back to Africa, right? Like, no, I'm staying here because I was born here,
and belong here.
And I belong here. With that said, it's important. And in fact, you owe me because of the blood of my ancestors that built this country, that you benefit from being in this position of power. Like, so no, you've got to reconcile for that. You've got to make reparations, repair for that. You can't just simply, as we talked about, people if you enslave you incarcerate someone, and you know that ultimately they did not do even what you incarcerated them for, and say, oh, we're sorry, now you can go free. Well, 20 years, 50 years of my life that I've been subjected to being, for all intent and purposes, a slave. Because if you're incarcerated, you are all intent purposes. The Constitution says that slavery was abolished with the exception of those who've been convicted of a crime. So for all intent purposes, every person who is incarcerated is a slave. Yeah. That's why they can treat you inhumanely, or they can make you work and give you literally pennies a day, because you are considered a slave.
Even within the prison system, which is why I'm so glad you guys are now giving voices to people behind the wall, is because that is their goal. They know there's a big demographic of African Americans coming into the prison, and they know the second you go into prison, they reap you of your rights. Most people who go into prison don't even know they can vote like they can in Massachusetts. They're reaping you your rights right away.
Yes,
and they know what they're doing by not telling you that.
Oh, sure.
So as they continue on to do that, it's just a way for them to make you fall at their feet again, and they're becoming a slave without calling you a slave. You come out, and what do you need? You need a whole bunch of government services. You're unemployed. You need unemployment. You need food stamps because you can't get a job. People read your resume, and it's like, okay, well, where were you this part of your life? Oh, I was in jail. Okay, so I'm not going to hire you.
Yep.
So it's just a reoccurring thing, and I don't know how we break the barrier, but you guys are starting to take initiative with breaking the barrier. But it's one step at a time. Honestly.
It's real talk, and I so appreciate that you have an appreciation for returning citizens, Nasir, with the fact that God has given you the grace in your life that you have not, that hasn't been your experience. It hasn't been your, I don't know if it's been your family's experience, if you have, people in your family, that have been incarcerated. But it's interesting that though that's not been your experience, or I haven't heard you express it being people directly connected to you, but yet you have an empathy and a compassion, and you're not judgmental or self-righteous with regard to people who may be incarcerated, whether they did it or whether they didn't do it.
It is, honestly. And being here just allowed me to, I'm going to be truthful with you.
Yeah.
I'd look at people who went to jail and I'd be like, okay, they don't deserve a life. They don't deserve a life after that. But being here allowed me to open up my eyes and see a different perspective as, okay, most people are in jail for things they didn't commit. But you can go to jail for something as simple as a parking ticket.
Yes.
A parking ticket, really, just because I parked my car in a place where you said I couldn't park. It's crazy to me. So I'm glad you guys allowed me and helped me open my eyes to realize, or even meeting Eric Kennedy, which is someone who's a return citizen.
Yes.
And even speaking to him, it really helped me realize, okay, these are good people that just got put in places at the bad time.
Yes. It could be a person whom again was wrongfully accused and didn't, whatever didn't have the resources to be able to pay bail, didn't have or whatever, just was put there wrongfully. And or even if a person has made a mistake, which of us who haven't made a mistake, right? So there are people who, and as you said yesterday, as it relates to young people, there's really no good or bad people or youth. It's situations happen to people. People may do bad things for reasons, but that doesn't mean that they are a bad person. And so everybody has redemption. Everybody can be redeemed, and everybody has. If you've got breath in your body, God has a purpose for your life. And so it's important for us to understand, as long as you got breath, even if you've made a bunch of mistakes, those mistakes can be lessons that you learned from, and now you're qualified to be able to help somebody else to understand that they don't want to go that way, and you can speak with a passion and an anointing and an effectiveness, because you have been where they either think they want to go or where they may be and are trying to get out. What do you think?
I mean, honestly, like you said, everyone, for those of you who weren't here yesterday, we touched on the fact that everyone has good and bad in them. Now, a lot of people label them as bad people. Now, there's bad in everyone, but there's good in everyone too.
Right.
Just because you do something bad does not label you as a bad person. You just happen to do something bad. And with the grace of God, everyone has the will to turn it the other way around, which definitely Eric Kennedy has shown that he's realized his mistakes, and he's figured out what to do to move on from them. And he's made himself an amazing person coming out of jail. Even reading his book, he wrote a book called The Unmasking, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and as I was opening it, I noticed between each chapter, he kind of had like a little section that was like, how do you feel right now? Do you ever sit there and notice like the smell of the room that you're in and the aroma? How does that make you feel? Or I noticed one of them was like, can you feel your fingertips buzzing right now? And I was like, I enjoy the fact that as you're reading it, it's like he's having a conversation with you. And even when I asked him about it, he was like, I want it to be like I'm conversating with you, and not just more so you're reading my story, but the fact that I'm connecting with you without really having to sit in your face and connect with you. So you, at the end of this book, you might not realize you haven't met me face to face, but it's almost like you now meet me and you're now my closest friend.
Yes.
And I enjoy he touched upon that, and he really highlights for anyone who hasn't met him yet, what the people who have done bad but have good in them. They're not bad people, but they have bad things that they have done. If I said that properly, I believe I did.
Yes. And so, and the book is incredible. In fact, as I was sharing with Nasir, that it was 5 years that we engaged with Eric over the air when we used to do the Church of the Midnight Hour broadcast before this book was published, as it was a manuscript wherein he was in the process of writing the book. And upon coming out of incarceration, he actually published the book and is doing really well with the book. And in fact, we encourage you to get a copy of the book. He can personally autograph it for you. And again, he actually has been giving people who donate to Healing Our Land of a donation of $50 or more a copy of his book personally autographed. And we mailed one out to one person who gave a donation on honor of Abby's birthday, interesting enough. So this is a friend of hers who gave a donation of $100 to Healing Our Land on behalf of her birthday. And so since we put it out there, he said, well, that's over 50. So he gave actually a copy of the book both to Abby as well as to the gentleman who did it on her behalf. So that's something that still stands. So if you're interested, in fact, as he said before, we're in the process of our webpage. We have brochures that we have just written, and now just need to pay for it to be able to actually to receive. And so we're building, we're growing. The website will be launched in short order. We're just, making a few minor adjustments to that. We have the website, we've got the brochures, we'll have cards that we can be able to share as we're going through the community and doing, letting people know how to connect with Nasir, how to connect with Eric, as well as myself. And as we build capacity, we have volunteermatch.org as we set up an account with them. And once the webpage goes live, we'll be able to complete that application and have people who are professionals, and perhaps you guys are out there that are professionals that want to be on our board of directors, want to be on our staff. There's so many different roles and things that we need help with as we are in this growth spurt of healing our land. So we got like literally 7 minutes before we got to go to our station ID. And I'm curious, any feedback that, that anything you wanted to convey to our listening and viewing audience from your perspective and or from your network, any sentiment that you wanted to share?
I do have two things to say. Also, if you want to join and volunteer right now at the moment with Healing Our Land and going into prisons and working with prison reform and actually helping people behind the wall vote and get ready to reacclimate as they return to society, you can reach me at 774-297-7740 or as well as nasir.healingourlandinc@gmail.com. As well as that, I have a couple people asking, where can you buy the book from at the moment right now? If you wanted a copy of the book, and where could you get it from?
Good question. So actually, I think the best way to get a copy of the book is really, let me think. What is the best way? We have copies. I honestly think the best way is to reach us here. They could contact you if you want.
Yeah, if you guys,
they can contact you, and then obviously we can contact Eric. We have copies of the book here. We're in communication with Eric, and so we can get you a personal autographed copy. I think the best way is to communicate with us so that we can get you a personally autographed copy of it. And I don't remember how much they cost. Oh Lord, this is terrible. Eric is actually at a financial literacy workshop with another returning citizen, and so I don't know the exact cost of it, so don't quote me on the cost. But in any event, contact Nasir. You can give them.
Contact me, and I'll connect you to your proper services.
So yeah, so that was the only feedback that they had was.
Yeah, at the moment. Let me see what else. I think some of them are typing in the chat actually.
On our main webpage.
Yeah.
I apologize that I don't have my laptop. Fortunately, I don't have my more recent laptop, so this older one is giving me a little technical challenge right now.
While we are here, I want to ask you, how did you guys make the transition from HIV and AIDS to the returning citizens?
Good question. So what happened is, in the context of doing focus on HIV and AIDS, we were intentional in what groups are at high risk for either contracting HIV or transmitting HIV. And unfortunately, one of those populations was returning citizens. So that was really kind of much of my entree into this particular population, because we found that in the early stage of the epidemic, where a lot of black women were disproportionately dying from the disease, unfortunately were being infected by their partners who were men, and sometimes men who were coming out of incarceration, dealing with addiction, with trauma, situations that people to support their drug habit are engaging in promiscuity, and those are things that oftentimes would put their spouse at risk, even unbeknownst to them. So that was the initial impetus, because again, understand, Healing Our Land was formed out of a support group for HIV positive men of color, Latino and African American, and the commonality is that these were men of color who were living with a death sentence, because at that time you died from HIV, you didn't live with it. And so they're here where you could get some medications, you could get some resources. What they couldn't do was disclose in the context of their race and their faith. So hearing that cry for community, black faith community, that one would be educated themselves about the facts against the myths of HIV. If I hug somebody who has HIV, will I catch it? No. Wasn't. So there were a lot of fears that the black church had that we had to dismantle, but that came again from a group of black men, black and brown men, who were all the commonality, whether they identified as gay or straight or whatever they identified as, what they really more identified, they were black men with this death sentence that and so that and many of them have been incarcerated. So that was the impetus of the incarcerated population. Now, fortunately, HIV now is a manageable chronic disease. In fact, you can take medication prophylactically.
I don't think it's promised to completely get rid of it, correct?
Oh, no. When I say prophylactically, meaning you can take medication now to prevent from getting HIV.
Yes.
And so if you take the medication, you can be sexually active and not ever acquire HIV because they made such advancement with the medication that you can take medication to prevent you from ever acquiring HIV. And should you get HIV, again, you can take the medication and it will quickly be able to suppress it so that it's not damaging your own body or you're not able to infect somebody else and transmit it. So now it can be a chronic manageable disease. So now that has there's still, you can get HIV, you still don't want HIV, but it's not the death sentence. However, on the heels of George Floyd and Black Lives Matters, now there is a lot more people who are focusing on prison reform, and so we just stayed in that lane. We were already doing it. That was one of the populations, not the only population, but one of the high risk populations that we were focused on. And so we continue to work with that population even as time has moved on, and now the disease has become something that is more manageable. We still continue to now then Black Lives Matters happened, and George Floyd, and police reform, and violence, and the whole guns, proliferation of guns. So that was the reason why we decided we needed to continue, and continuing to work with the population, we found that re-entry was a big issue in terms of housing, in terms of employment and community, so that we can be able to have folks who can do prevention to prevent folks from going to incarceration by telling their stories, and having people who've come out be housed, to be employed, and then create this mechanism that is a place of restorative justice. They can give back from where they've taken and create a mechanism that can be an institution, being this 5-star hotel. So that's going to be built by returning citizens. So that's kind of how we morphed into a kind of a priority with this particular population.
I'm glad you guys have, because it's working. You're working one step at a time. I want to just say that one of my friends today said he wanted to say, I love the show, and he would try to get a copy of the book. And all love.
Amen. Well, thank you for being with us, and thank you for and being tuned in, your positive feedback, and certainly your support of the book. And we'd be really curious to hear your feedback on the book once you get the book, because again, Nasir picked it up immediately, and again, we know he's a person who's a speed reader, but he was told we need to do this, and even not just speed read through it, but even as he has kind of just glanced through it, he has absorbed so much, and hopefully you will the same.
Yes, I would. That's one of the things he said. He was like, please don't speed read it. And I was like, unfortunately, like I wouldn't consider it speed reading. I'm retaining it, but it's just the pace I happen to read.
That's a good thing.
I can't really change that.
It's a good thing, man. It's a good thing. Nasir, believe it or not, and listening and viewing audience, we do got to pause just for a moment because we're at the top of the hour. We have to do our FCC regulations, and so we're going to pause the stream and go to our station ID, and we will be back on the other side of the top of the hour for yet another hour. Hopefully you'll stay with us. We'll be right back.